Hey everybody, how are you doing? Thank you all for coming out. It's an exciting night. The show is several months in preparation. It was going to originally be in May, and there was an incident with the vanilla milkshake that pushed it back to here. But Keith's here, hip's healing, he's doing well. In the show, we tried to lay out studies that Keith does on a daily basis when he just moves around the world. I mean, I know if I have a 3 o'clock, if Keith tells me he's going to be at the gallery at 3 o'clock, I know it's a coin toss on whether he'll show up. Simply because he gets in his car, he sees the right thing, he goes to his spot, and he just starts doing his watercolors or drawing or doing his, Keith things. Special for me. I mean, Keith is really, as a young man, like I first met him when I was 9. And he's sort of, when my mom commissioned him to do a painting in our backyard. And so Keith is very much, from a young buck perspective, the definition of what an artist is. But, that's not even half of who he is. I mean, he's a wonderful person that's been a mentor and a guide to me for years. So we wanted to have sort of a question and answer segment here. Now, the show continues on the 3rd floor, and if you go up onto the 3rd floor, you'll see on the TV, there's a PBS documentary that was filmed in the late 70s of Keith, and it's sort of playing on a loop up there, and not to be a spoiler, but at one point he takes the person outside, and it's just cold as cold can be. And Keith is just as comfortable can be, and the PBS guy is freezing. And one of the first things I wanted to ask Keith is, does your drive to go outside and paint and do studies, how does that change during the seasons? Or does it? Or is it a consistent thing?
It has to do with a coat or not a coat. I like winter, and I'm very much attracted to it visually, and I have been since I was a kid. So it's not unusual for me to be out there when there's snow on the ground, and when there's a nice sort of layer of beautiful, warm, gray cloud, and those sorts of things are things that sort of flow out of my childhood memory into my adulthood and takes me out there.
Now there's another video that we're putting together that basically encompasses, Keith's father, Norman, was a photographer. And Paula recently, this week, gave me a disc that we had transferred into a digital file that's essentially the first 20 years of Keith's life. 23.
Yeah.
And it's, it's a life of, pretty much birthdays and Christmases. So it automatically seems enchanted, but what early childhood, I kept on waiting for the segment where they'd show Keith painting, but that never occurred. What first drew you to art? What were your first subjects that you did? What were your inspirations?
My father was very much responsible for that, because my father was very much interested in the arts, and he had friends who were painters. So I grew up around painters as a kid, and also my father taught me to fly an airplane, and there were a lot of interesting things in my life that happened because I had this father who was a very sort of dynamic and interesting guy.
Now, can you tell us about, when you came to Lincoln, your position, to take the position at the university, you really affected a huge amount of, artists from, the following generation, but what drew you to Nebraska? What made you come here?
A job. And to be honest, I didn't think I'd stay here. I thought, well, I'll be here for a year, and then I'm going to take my tail back to Kansas City. Because it just seemed like nothing was happening here. But I discovered fairly quickly that a lot of interesting things were going on here, and that there was a lovely landscape that surrounded this city of Lincoln. And so I stayed a year, and then I stayed 2 years, and then I stayed 3. And by the time I'd stayed 3, I said, I'm here, I'm done, I'm going to stay. And I've never regretted one moment of it.
Bravo.
Now, your work we have on display, works from the 70s to, the paintings that you completed this year. How has your work changed over the years? Is there a different focus, or have we kept pretty true?
Well, I brought the horizon up a little bit. I've done that. I don't know, I think probably my sense of color has changed since I got here. The color here was somewhat different than it was in Kansas City, which is a river city. So you get a different kind of light. And so I began to recognize those things. And I began to realize that there was something going on here that had to do with seduction. Just plain being seduced by the light, the quality of light, especially in the latter part of the afternoon into evening, and the quality of the skies. The skies were just terrific here. They still are. I mean, all you have to do is take a drive outside of the city, and there they are, and they're extraordinary, and they're extraordinary almost every day.
I have a question too about that. Weren't you in LA when there was quite a bit of smog?
I was. Yeah. Yeah, I lived in
63
that.
or something?
Yeah, I went to LA to go to a place called Art Center School, which was a real highfalutin commercial art school, and that's what you went to if you wanted to become an illustrator or become a designer. And so I went to LA and found a boarding house and lived in this boarding house and got a bicycle and would ride to school. One morning I woke up and got on my bike and I looked over my shoulder, and out there was this incredible landscape and horizon, which I had not seen since I got there, because the smog was so deep. That really did change my life in a way, and how things can be hidden in that way. And I was very, very fortunate that I was out there long enough to see the smog kind of clear here and there, and then I got to see the rest of the city.
So you can appreciate the Lincoln skyline.
Absolutely.
I know, I can't, every time I drive home, there's a sunset, I kind of look out there, you're like, this is Jacobshagen. And you sort of defined, an area, an area. And yeah, I mean, does anyone have anything they'd like to ask Keith? Oh, I know you guys do. We've got like 100 people. All right, Ed, what do you want to ask?
Up on the third floor in that video, who's the guy with the black mustache?
28-year-old Keith.
I look like I was a gambler.
I like it. You can get your hair like that Heather sort of, yeah. But we're gonna. Anyone else have anything that? Yes.
I just wanted to ask how the Keith developed over a period of time this incredible ability to capture the sun, sunlight, clouds, and so forth. How, has that changed some? But, I mean, that's really, in some ways, a brand. You can always tell Keith Jacobshagen by looking at not only the landscape, but the clouds as well.
Well, thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. It just takes a lot of looking and being willing to look, to sit still and spend some time looking. In fact, there was a period of time in which I realized I'm spending way too much time painting. I've got to spend more time looking. And so now I have a pretty decent balance when I go out there to make a watercolor study or something, between doing the work itself and just sitting there and being so damn happy that I'm there.
Are there things that you wish you could do differently?
Always. Yeah, always. I've always been able to admit to myself when I've done something incredibly silly, but at the same time, I've always learned by them eventually, and so I've learned to be patient. And as the work develops, I don't even think my work is done yet. I think I'm still developing. We'll see.
You talked about doing a Twilight series, and tell us a little bit about what the game plan is with that. Just tell people what the Twilight series would be.
Ink. I'm being sly about that. But I just know that I like to be out there at that time of the day. And oftentimes I'll stay out there almost until dark. And then I'll drive home. And there's something just magical about that light between that, I'd say 20 minutes, maybe just 15 minutes between light and dark. That is magical to me. And I've had many a farmer stop, see me sitting out in his field after dark, thinking that I was hurt, injured, you know. And I have been injured. Yeah. I've fallen in a ditch or two, that's for sure. Yeah.
Well, we've all fallen into a ditch or two. Tim, what?
So, do you have a hidden inventory of scenes ready to go that you select from, or you just get in your vehicle and drive out in the countryside and say, well, that looks pretty good? You have a backstock of stuff you have not painted, or do you just get in the car and drive?
Oh, sure. Actually, the paintings that have come before oftentimes are charging my memory in terms of it getting me excited to go out and look someplace else. Driving back from when I'm making a drawing, if it isn't too dark, I see a lot of stuff I want to come back to. And I don't always make a note when I get home like I should. And so I have to try to see if I can figure out and call that up in my memory and get those gray cells moving and get me out there to that place that I saw that I felt was magical when I saw it 2 or 3 days ago, you know. And sometimes it's totally different. It's exotic, yeah.
So is there one direction, one space in the sky that you go to more than others?
Well, it's interesting you say that because I have been going mostly to the east and southeast and just sort of working back and forth between the Platte River Valley and here. And I never tire of making that drive. Even if I don't stop and make a drawing, I make some kind of a mental note that I can go use to get back there to make a drawing. It's just lovely. It's just absolutely lovely. Yeah. Yes.
Steve.
How do you go about an easel painting as opposed to going out painting from life, out in the...
Oh, and this painting in the studio.
Yeah, how do you go about a large easel painting?
Makes me tired to even think about it. Usually, I don't always know what's going to go on that blank canvas when I first sit on the easel. But if I take the time to drink a cup of coffee or maybe a little bit of bourbon, something begins to develop. And sometimes what develops when I first start the sort of the drawing, which is done in it's done in oil, but it's done very thinly, so it looks like watercolor. And when I might get halfway through that drawing and I'll realize, oh, this is not exactly what I was thinking about. So then I have to kind of rethink it, and maybe I'll come into the living room and chit-chat with Paula for a while, or she'll come in and sort of prompt me and say, well, what's going on? You're sitting there looking stunned. But usually it comes up, something comes up out of that gray matter, that we all have, which is such a magical piece of machinery that we have up here on our heads. This business that we can actually remember things. It'll be very sad the day that any of us begin to lose that, because it really is a magical place to be. Yeah.
So, being a pilot influenced your perspective?
Oh. Well, it's interesting. I haven't flown for a while, but my father taught me to fly. I soloed before I was old enough to drive. I really had a lot of things to thank him for. But part of that was the fact that he got me to fly airplanes. And I think that those years of flying, which are way behind me now, still continue in some way to generate something in my emotions and in my vision when I'm out there. And it may be something, a memory that I can't call up. I only know that it's there and I have a sense of it. And sometimes it's something very, very concrete. Yeah.
How do you know when you're done? When one more
Oh,
time is
that's
it
such a
gonna
good, that is a good question. Yeah. When my wife tells me. When she walks in and said, "Are you still working on that?" No, that's a very curious question. How do you know when you're done? Sometimes I think I'm done, and a day later or 2 days later, or
sometimes years.
sometimes years later, that's right, I've found a painting that I worked on and put aside and maybe turned aside, and it sort of got lost, and I find it, and there it is. And it just conjures up this memory, and that allows me to just go ahead and finish it. That's kind of an exciting place to be.
I have a question. So I know you're a photographer too.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering, how often do you paint from a photograph of where you are?
Oh, pretty regularly now.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't. Sometimes I'll make a painting from a print, photo print.
Mm-hmm.
But mostly I'll just look at the back of the camera, and I'll see something exciting. And it's small enough, because it's, you're seeing an image like that it's sort of abstract when I look at it. And it helps me to sort of think about the abstraction of what that painting might start out to look like. Yeah.
He's also addicted to SX70s.
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
He has an
Horror,
SX-70
yeah.
camera that he still uses.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, Vin, Mom, was yes.
I just, I don't think you have any regrets, but I remember the time that the chief representative from Haslund, Gooden and Fox from the London gallery that had the Queen seal came with the director of the assistant director of the Denver Art Museum, Timothy Standring, and he wanted you to come to England and paint
The Cotswolds.
and go around.
You'll never get over that, will you?
And he, I think we have such a treasure here because he said, and I'm like, Keith, this is world class. This is world class. And he said, Vivian, I love where I am. I love where I'm painting. And you just said no. And I couldn't get over it. And then later on, when we were taking Blaine Faison, who he was one of the monuments men that we had the opportunity to know and travel with way back in the early 90s. He was blown away by Keith's work. And he said he bought a little watercolor that you did. And he said, Vivian, we're going to go out into the country and we're going to find, well, it was when Sawtell Road was out in nowhere. And he said, you see what he's done? He said, we're standing right where the annotated, but do you see what he's done? He has taken the barn that's here and putting it there. He just gave me an art history lesson. And he was one of the great art historians that is no longer with us. But also, one other thing that I remember when we were, I think there with Blaine, and we were showing Blaine his I think it was your field notes and your watercolors, and I was going through, and then all of a sudden I saw my name, and I thought, oh, this is my name, and it said something like, Vivian is bugging me to do things I really don't want to do.
Some things understand.
But I think we lose sight of the fact that, you know, you've been you and Paula too, have been great people to work with, and I'm just so pleased that Buck and Lisa and Chloe and everybody else has put together this beautiful show. And I'm so happy that my granddaughter is here from New York and her significant other.
All right, thanks, Mom.